I'm Anya, 32, and for years my family treated me like a walking bank. While my sister, Elara, lived a life of luxury, I was left with the scraps. When my grandfather passed away, they manipulated him into leaving me nothing. Every penny went to them and my spoiled sister. I was their financial safety net, giving them over $42,000 that I knew I'd never see again. Then, one day my mom texted, "We need help with the mortgage." My response changed everything. I finally found the courage to say no. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Sterling family meant one thing: responsibility. From age 10, I was expected to be the perfect role model, get straight A's, and help with my younger sister, Elara. Meanwhile, Elara lived in a completely different world. I remember my 16th birthday. While my friends got cars and lavish parties, I received a calculator for my advanced math class and a lecture about saving for college. 3 years later, Elara's 16th birthday was a weekend at a 5-star resort, a designer wardrobe, and the exact car I had worked 3 summers to buy myself. "Anya is so responsible," my mother Vivian would tell relatives. "She doesn't need the extras that Elara does." This became a recurring theme throughout my childhood. When I consistently made the honor roll, it was expected. When Elara managed to get a C average, my parents threw a celebratory dinner. My father, Charles, was less obvious about the favoritism but enabled it through his silence. A quiet man who worked as an architect, he would occasionally slip me $20 when I achieved something significant, a secret acknowledgement that never translated to actual equality in our home. College was where the disparity became impossible to ignore. Despite my scholarships, I worked 30 hours a week at the campus library to cover the remaining expenses. Elara attended the same university 3 years later, but her experience was entirely different. My parents paid her full tuition, provided housing in the premium dorms, and gave her a monthly allowance that exceeded what I earned working. When I questioned this disparity, my mother's response was sharp. "You've always been good with money, Anya. Elara needs more support to succeed." After graduation, I moved to the city and secured an entry-level position at a reputable accounting firm. Those early years were tough. My tiny studio apartment barely fit a bed and a desk, but it was mine, earned through my own hard work. I steadily climbed the corporate ladder, building the financial stability my parents never taught me to expect. It was during this time that I met Ben at a friend's New Year's Eve party. A kind and grounded software engineer, he saw through my carefully constructed independence to the hurt beneath. "It's okay to be angry about how they treated you," he told me on our 3rd date, after I'd brushed off yet another story about my family's dynamics. Despite the distance I had put between myself and my hometown, I still called my parents weekly. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts. I visited for major holidays. Each time, I hoped for some recognition that never came. Each time, I left with a mix of disappointment and a renewed determination to stop seeking their approval. The pattern continued for years. When Elara dropped out of grad school to find herself, my parents supported her financially without question. When she cycled through jobs, quitting whenever responsibilities became too demanding, they praised her free spirit. Meanwhile, my promotions and achievements received cursory acknowledgments. Nevertheless, I maintained contact. I told myself that family was family, that things would eventually balance out. That delusion shattered when my grandfather, Theodore, passed away last year. Grandpa Theo had always been different from my parents. He noticed me during family gatherings. He would ask about my career and genuinely listen to my answers. He kept a photo of me at my college graduation on his mantle. When I visited, he would slip me books about successful women in business, with notes like, "Reminds me of you," written inside. He was the family member who made me feel valued. When he became ill, I took time off work to help care for him. I organized his medications, drove him to appointments, and spent evenings reading to him while my parents and Elara made occasional appearances. During those quiet hours, he would sometimes squeeze my hand and say, "You're a good egg, Anya. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." So, when I received the call about his passing, the grief was genuine. I flew home immediately, expecting to mourn with my family. Instead, I was about to discover just how deep the family favoritism ran and how it would ultimately force me to make the hardest decision of my life. The night before the funeral, sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, I found myself looking at old photographs of Grandpa Theo and me. In one, I was about 7, sitting on his lap while he taught me to fish. In another, he was standing proudly, beside me at my high school graduation. I traced his face with my finger, whispering, "I miss you already." Little did I know, the next day would bring revelations that would change everything I thought I knew about my family and about the grandfather I had loved so dearly. The funeral for Grandfather Theodore was a somber affair held at the same church, where he had attended services for over 50 years. I sat in the front row beside my parents and Elara, accepting condolences from distant relatives and my grandfather's friends. Many approached me specifically, mentioning how Theodore had spoken highly of me, how proud he was of my accomplishments. Each comment strengthened my resolve to honor his memory. 3 days later, we gathered at the office of Mr. Franklin, my grandfather's attorney, for the reading of the will. The office was furnished with dark wood and leather, photographs of Mr. Franklin's sailing adventures decorating the walls. My grandfather had mentioned several times over the years that he had taken care of me in his will. While I wasn't expecting a fortune, his words had provided comfort, a final validation of our special bond. "Before we begin," Mr. Franklin said, adjusting his reading glasses, "I want to express my condolences. Theodore was not just a client, but a friend." As Mr. Franklin began reading the standard legal preamble, I noticed my mother and Elara exchanging glances. Something about their expressions made my stomach tighten. "To my daughter Vivian and her husband Charles, I leave my house and all its contents, valued at approximately $320,000. My parents nodded, unsurprised. "To my granddaughter Elara, I leave my investment portfolio, currently valued at $175,000, and my collection of rare coins, appraised at $42,000. Elara smiled, reaching for my mother's hand. "To my granddaughter Anya," Mr. Franklin continued, looking up at me over his glasses, "I leave my collection of books, particularly those we discussed during our time together, and my fishing equipment, which brought us joy on our outings." I waited for more, but Mr. Franklin had already moved on to smaller bequests to distant relatives. The room seemed to tilt around me. Books and fishing gear. Nothing else. "Is that all?" I asked when Mr. Franklin finished, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Mr. Franklin looked uncomfortable. "Yes, that's the entirety of your grandfather's bequest to you." "But that can't be right," I said. "He told me he had taken care of me in his will." My mother cleared her throat. "Anya, this isn't the time or place." Mr. Franklin shuffled papers. "I should mention that this will was updated approximately 8 months ago. The previous version had a different distribution, but Theodore was of sound mind when he made these changes. 8 months ago, when I was working 60-hour weeks in the city, while my parents had daily access to my grandfather. The drive home from the lawyer's office was a blur. I declined the family lunch, claiming I needed to make work calls. Instead, I drove to the park where Grandpa Theo had taught me to fish. Sitting on our favorite bench, I finally let the tears come. Not for the money itself, but for what it represented. Even my grandfather, in the end, had chosen Elara over me. My phone rang. It was Sarah, my best friend since college. "How did it go?" she asked. "They got everything," I said, my voice breaking. "Mom, Dad, Elara, I got his books and fishing gear." A pause. Oh, Anya. He changed his will 8 months ago. They must have gotten to him somehow. Are you sure? That doesn't sound like the grandfather you described to me. I don't know what to believe anymore, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, determined to get answers. I found them and Elara in the living room, already discussing how to invest the inheritance. I need to talk to you, I said from the doorway. My mother looked up, irritation crossing her face. We thought you'd gone back to the city. Not yet. I want to know what happened with Grandpa's will. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. These things are complicated, Anya. 8 months ago, his will was different. What changed? Elara rolled her eyes. Why does it matter? It's done. It matters to me, I insisted. He told me he had provided for me. My mother stood up. Your grandfather realized that Elara needs the financial support more than you do. You have your career, your stability. Elara is still finding her path. Finding her path? She's 29 years old. When does she become responsible for herself? That's unfair, my father interjected. Your sister has different challenges. Like what? Being spoiled her entire life? Having everything handed to her? Alara's face flushed. Just because you decided to be a corporate drone doesn't mean I have to follow your boring life choices. We've been supporting Elara while she explores her options, my mother added. The inheritance will give her a foundation. And what about me? Didn't I deserve anything from Grandpa? My mother's expression hardened. You were always good with money, Anya. You don't need the help. Those words, repeated from my childhood, hit me like a physical blow. My financial responsibility, cultivated through necessity rather than choice, had once again been weaponized against me. Did you talk to Grandpa about changing his will? I asked directly. The momentary glance between my parents was all the confirmation I needed. We discussed family needs with him, my father admitted. As parents, we have to consider what's best for both our children. Both? When have you ever considered what's best for me? That's not fair, my mother snapped. We've always been there for you. I laughed bitterly. Been there for me? When? When I worked through college while you paid for Elara's way? When I built my career without any support? Or maybe when I bailed you out of your financial emergencies time after time? The room fell silent. What financial emergencies? Elara asked, looking confused. I turned to her. You didn't know? Our parents have been coming to me for money for years. That's why I'm good with money, because I've had to be to support not just myself, but all of you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The revelation hung in the air as I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. In the rental car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, finally acknowledging the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My family had been using me, and I had allowed it to happen. The first time my parents asked me for financial help was 3 years after I moved to the city. I had just been promoted to staff accountant at my firm and had finally started building a modest savings account. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was preparing dinner in my apartment. Anya. It's Mom. We have a situation. Her voice had that particular tone, a mixture of urgency and martyrdom that I'd come to recognize as a prelude to bad news. The situation was a 3-month delinquency on their mortgage. The bank was threatening foreclosure. They needed $7,800 to get current and avoid losing their home. My father had been between projects, Mom explained, and they had fallen behind. I transferred the money that night, dipping into the savings I'd earmarked for a down payment on my own place. When I asked about a repayment plan, my mother sounded offended. We're family, Anya. We don't need formal arrangements between us. We'll pay you back when things stabilize. Things never stabilized. 6 months later, they needed $2,500 for property taxes, then $1,800 for a new furnace. Each time I transferred the money without question, each time the promise to repay faded a little quicker. Elara's financial needs soon joined the parade of requests. Her car needed $3,200 in repairs. Her apartment security deposit was $2,000. A medical bill for $4,500 arrived after an emergency room visit when she lacked insurance. Each time my parents called me rather than dealing with the situation themselves. "Elara is struggling right now," they would say. "You know how hard things are for young people these days." The irony that I was only 3 years older than Elara never seemed to register with them. Meanwhile, my own life was on hold. The vacation to Mexico with Sarah, planned for months, was canceled so I could cover my parents' property tax bill. The engagement ring Ben and I had chosen was downgraded to a simpler model so I could help with Elara's medical expenses. Ben grew increasingly concerned. "They're taking advantage of you," he said one night after I'd spent an hour on the phone with my mother about Elara's latest financial crisis. "Their family," I replied automatically. "What am I supposed to do? Let them suffer?" "They're adults who make choices, bad financial choices, repeatedly. And they know you'll bail them out, so they have no incentive to change." I defended them fiercely, though a part of me recognized the truth in his words. That part grew larger. With each request, with each broken promise to repay, with each casual dismissal of my own financial goals. After one particularly heated argument about boundaries, I created a spreadsheet documenting every loan I'd provided to my family. The total shocked even me. $42,385 over 5 years. Not a single dollar repaid. Despite this revelation, I continued to answer their calls, continued to transfer money when asked, continued to believe that somehow, someday they would recognize my sacrifices and reciprocate the support I'd given them. My career progressed steadily. I made senior accountant, then supervisor. My income increased, but my savings remained stagnant. Friends my age were buying homes, taking international vacations, investing for retirement. I was subsidizing my family's lifestyle while deferring my own dreams. The requests always came at the worst possible times. When I was preparing for a major presentation, my mother would call about an overdue electric bill. When Ben and I were celebrating an anniversary, Elara would text about rent money. Their emergencies always trumped my priorities. The manipulation was subtle but effective. If I hesitated before agreeing to help, my mother would sigh dramatically. "I guess we'll just have to figure something out. I was hoping not to burden your father with this worry with his blood pressure issues." Or, "Elara was counting on us to help, but I'll have to tell her we can't. She's been so fragile lately." Always the implication that a refusal from me would cause suffering, would make me the villain in the family narrative. And so I continued to give, continued to enable their financial irresponsibility. Ben watched with growing concern. "This isn't sustainable," he said. "You're sacrificing your future for people who wouldn't do the same for you." "You don't understand family obligation," I replied, though my conviction was weakening. "I understand healthy relationships," he countered. "And this isn't one." Our relationship strained under the weight of my family dynamics. Ben wanted a future with me, one that included marriage, possibly children, financial security. That future seemed increasingly distant as my family drained my resources. Still, I maintained the image of the successful daughter. I visited for holidays, brought gifts, listened to my parents brag about Elara's latest endeavors while minimizing my achievements. I smiled through dinners where Elara described trips I could never afford because I was paying her bills. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. I was simultaneously the family success story and the family ATM, the responsible one who could never do enough, and the selfish one for occasionally questioning the arrangement. Throughout this period, I maintained detailed records. Every transfer, every broken promise, every guilt trip. Not because I expected repayment, but because some part of me needed evidence that I wasn't imagining the imbalance, that my growing resentment had foundation in reality. As my 30th birthday approached, Ben suggested therapy. Not because there's something wrong with you, he clarified, but because you deserve support navigating this situation. I resisted initially. Therapy felt like an admission of failure, that I couldn't handle my family on my own. But as another year passed with no change in the dynamic, I finally made an appointment with Dr. Lena Winters, a therapist specializing in family relationships. In her comfortable office, surrounded by plants and calming artwork, I unfolded my family story. With each session, patterns emerged that I had been too close to see. The financial exploitation was just one manifestation of a deeper dysfunction. "What you're describing sounds like financial abuse," Dr. Winters said during our third session. "Your family has created a dynamic where your resources are seen as communal property, while theirs remain private. That's not reciprocity. That's exploitation." The word abuse felt extreme, yet accurate. It created a framework for understanding years of manipulation, years of one-sided giving. As I approached the breaking point, one final revelation would push me over the edge, forcing me to make the decision I had been avoiding for years. A decision that would fundamentally alter my relationship with my family and set me on a path to reclaiming my life. The breaking point came unexpectedly during a routine Sunday call with my mother. I had stepped away from brunch with Ben to take the call, expecting the usual updates about neighborhood gossip and Elara's latest endeavors. "Have you seen Elara's Instagram?" my mother asked, pride evident in her voice. "The resort in Bali. Looks absolutely gorgeous. I hadn't seen it. I'd been working 70-hour weeks to complete a major audit for a client." "Bali? I thought Elara was job hunting." "Oh, she'll restart the search when she gets back. Your father and I thought she deserved a break after her last position didn't work out." Her last position, a marketing assistant role, had lasted exactly 6 weeks before Elara decided it wasn't aligned with her creative vision. "How is she affording Bali?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well, with part of her inheritance from your grandfather, of course. We thought it was a good investment in her well-being." I ended the call shortly after, returning to the table where Ben waited patiently. He took one look at my face and knew what had happened. "They used Grandpa's money to send Elara to Bali," I said flatly. "And last month they asked me for $200 for her job search expenses." Ben reached for my hand. "I'm sorry." Later that day, scrolling through Elara's social media, I came across a video that confirmed what I'd been denying for years. In it, Elara lounged by an infinity pool, cocktail in hand, talking to someone off camera. "No, I'm not worried about money," she laughed. "Between Mom and Dad and Anya, the family ATM, I'm covered." The term family ATM echoed in my head for days afterward. It was crude, but accurate. That's exactly what I had become. The following week, I made an appointment with my therapist, Dr. Winters, and a financial advisor, Mr. Graham, recommended by a colleague. "I need to make some changes," I told Dr. Winters, "but I'm afraid of losing my family completely." She nodded, understanding. That's a common fear when setting boundaries with family. But consider this. Are you actually losing relationships? Or are you losing the illusion of relationships that were based on exploitation? "It feels like abandoning them," I admitted. "Anya, parents are supposed to launch their children into independence, not make them responsible for family finances. You're not abandoning them by expecting them to function as adults." Over several sessions, we worked on specific language for boundary setting, anticipating emotional manipulation tactics, and managing the guilt that threatened to undermine my resolve. Meanwhile, Mr. Graham helped me assess the financial damage and create a recovery plan. "Based on your income and the amount you've been giving your family, you should have at least twice the savings you currently have, he noted, reviewing my finances. The good news is you're still young enough to catch up once you stop the financial drain. Together, we created a plan. Immediately cease all financial support to family. Redirect those funds to rebuilding my emergency savings. Then, accelerate retirement contributions and begin saving for a home down payment. You need to protect yourself, Mr. Graham advised. Consider setting up accounts they don't know about and perhaps even freezing your credit to prevent anyone from opening accounts in your name. The suggestion shocked me. My family wouldn't do that, I protested. Mr. Graham's expression was kind but firm. In my experience, when people are accustomed to accessing someone's resources and that access is suddenly cut off, they sometimes take desperate measures. For 2 weeks, I drafted and redrafted the email to my family. Ben provided feedback, as did Dr. Winters. The final version was clear, firm, but not accusatory. Dear Mom, Dad, and Elara, after careful consideration of my financial situation, I need to inform you that I will no longer be able to provide financial assistance to any of you. The support I've provided over the years has impacted my own financial security, and I need to prioritize my future. This decision is not up for negotiation. Please respect my boundary by not asking me for money, either directly or indirectly. This change is effective immediately. I value our family relationship and hope we can move forward with mutual respect. Anya. My finger hovered over the send button for nearly an hour before I finally pressed it. Immediately afterward, I blocked all 3 of their numbers on my phone, giving myself a 48-hour buffer from the inevitable backlash. Then I went to dinner with Ben, celebrating what felt like both an ending and a beginning. I'm proud of you, he said, raising his glass. This isn't easy, but it's necessary. I keep waiting for the guilt to hit, I admitted. But right now, all I feel is relief. The guilt would come, of course, and the anger, the hurt, the doubt. But in that moment, sitting across from the man who had stood by me through years of family drama, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life and my future. What I didn't know was how desperately my family would fight to maintain the status quo and how much strength I would need to hold my ground. The initial response to my email was exactly as I had anticipated. Silence. I imagined my mother reading it, lips pressed into a thin line, waiting for me to retract the boundary, as I had done countless times before. When I unblocked their numbers after 2 days, there were no missed calls, no frantic texts, just silence. They think I'll cave, I told Ben over dinner. They're waiting me out, he nodded. That's been the pattern. You set a boundary, they ignore it. You eventually give in. Not this time, I said with more confidence than I felt. The silence lasted exactly 1 week. Then the campaign began. First came the casual text from my mother. Just checking in. Sweetheart, haven't heard from you in a while. No mention of my email as if it had never existed. When I responded with general pleasantries, but no financial offers, the tone shifted. Your father and I were talking about that loan you gave us last year. We're planning to start repaying it soon. A carrot dangled with no specific timeline or amount. Next came voicemails, increasingly emotional. Anya, it's Mom. I'm worried about you. This isn't like you, cutting off communication with family. Please call me back. I hadn't cut off communication, only financial support. But in my family's mind, they were apparently the same thing. My father's attempt was more direct. He called on a Sunday afternoon, his voice gruff with discomfort. Anya, about this email. Your mother is very upset. I understand this is a change, Dad, but my decision stands. We're not asking for handouts, Anya. Just family helping family. Dad, I've given over $40,000 to you and Elara in the last 5 years. None of it repaid. That's not family helping family. That's one family member supporting 3 adults. A heavy sigh. You've always been so black and white about things. The conversation ended with no resolution, just a vague hope expressed by my father that I would come to my senses. Elara's approach was different. She waited 3 weeks, then called late one evening when she knew I'd be alone, as Ben had a regular Tuesday night gaming session with friends. I need to talk to you, she said, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years. What's up, Elara? I matched her casual tone. I'm in a bit of a situation. My credit cards are maxed out, and I've got some bills coming due. I was hoping you could help just this once. I can't do that, Elara. I was clear in my email. That was about Mom and Dad, not me, she protested. Besides, this is different. It's an emergency. What's the emergency exactly? She hesitated. Well, I need to pay rent, and there's this course I enrolled in for digital marketing. It's an investment in my future. That's not an emergency. That's poor planning. I'm sorry, but my answer is no. Her voice hardened. Fine, but you should know if I can't make rent, I'll have to move back home, and Mom and Dad can't really afford another person right now. The threat was clear. Help her, or she'd become my parents' problem, which would inevitably become my problem again. That's a decision you'll have to make, I said, maintaining my resolve. I love you, but I can't keep enabling financial irresponsibility. She hung up without another word. The next day, Elara posted a vague but pointed message on social media about family members who only care about money. Several relatives commented asking what had happened, and Elara shared a carefully edited version of our situation, casting herself as the abandoned sister and me as the heartless corporate drone who had neglected family values. I didn't respond, publicly. Instead, I forwarded the post to Dr. Winters, who reminded me that public shaming was a common tactic when direct manipulation failed. Stay the course, she advised. Engaging only validates the tactic. For weeks after my email, the situation escalated dramatically. A text arrived from my mother at 7 a.m. Mortgage is due. We're short $2,100. Can you transfer today? We'll pay back next month. No acknowledgement of my boundary. No explanation for the shortfall, just the expectation that I would comply as always. I took a deep breath and replied with a response I had practiced with Dr. Winters. I'm sorry to hear you're struggling, but as I stated in my email, I am no longer in a position to provide financial assistance. The response was immediate. This isn't like you, Anya. We're family. We need you. I turned off my phone and headed to work, focusing on the major client presentation I had that morning. When I checked my messages at lunch, I had 17 texts and voicemails from both parents, each more desperate than the last. Please, Anya, we could lose the house. Your father isn't well. This stress isn't good for him. I never thought my own daughter would turn her back on us. The last message was different, from my father. We need to have a family meeting this Sunday, 2 p.m. our house. No negotiate. I consulted with Ben and Dr. Winters before agreeing to attend. Both advised caution. This has all the hallmarks of an ambush, Ben warned. They're going to gang up on you. I can handle it, I assured him. I need to do this in person once and for all. Sunday arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. When I pulled up to my parents' house, I noticed several extra cars in the driveway. My Aunt Beatrice's sedan, my Uncle George's SUV, even my cousin Liam's motorcycle. Inside, the living room had been arranged like an intervention, chairs in a circle, somber faces all around. My parents sat together on the sofa, Elara beside them, eyes red as if she'd been crying. Anya, my mother began formally. Anya, he wrote, I've been doing a lot of thinking. While I don't agree with how you've handled this situation, I'm beginning to understand why you felt you had to take such drastic measures. Your mother and I are making changes. It's not easy. At our age, but we're trying. I hope someday we can rebuild what's been broken between us." It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was an acknowledgement. A small step toward potential reconciliation on new, healthier terms. As for Elara, silence continued. Of all the family relationships, hers would likely be the slowest to heal, if it ever did. Her identity had been built around being the favored child, the one who deserved support and special treatment. My refusal to participate in that dynamic threatened that identity at its foundation. But for the first time in my adult life, I was living without the constant drain of family financial emergencies, without the guilt of never doing enough, without the resentment of unequal treatment. I was building a future based on my own priorities rather than compensating for my family's poor choices. The one-line response that had changed everything, that had finally broken the cycle of exploitation, echoed in my mind during moments of doubt. "You already cut me out of your inheritance. Consider this my inheritance to myself." It wasn't just about money. It was about worth, about value, about the fundamental right to prioritize my own well-being. It was about reclaiming the life that had been on hold for too long. And despite the pain, despite the ongoing family drama, despite the unresolved relationships, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right choice. The inheritance I had given myself, the gift of boundaries and self-respect, was worth more than any dollar amount my grandfather could have left me. 6 months after establishing my financial boundaries with my family, I stood in the kitchen of my new condo, watching the morning light filter through windows that were mine, in a space that was mine, purchased with money that was mine. Ben leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand, watching me with a smile. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is," I replied. "A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this. The changes have been both profound and practical." Without the constant drain of supporting my family, my financial situation had improved dramatically. The promotion to senior manager at my firm, which had come 3 months earlier, allowed me to finally achieve the savings goals Mr. Graham had helped me establish. This condo, a modern 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I had previously considered beyond my reach, was the physical manifestation of my newfound financial independence. Every piece of furniture, every decorative touch had been chosen with intention rather than desperation or compromise. My relationship with Ben had strengthened through the family crisis. He had been my rock, offering support without judgment, respecting my decisions even when they were difficult. The small velvet box hidden in my desk drawer, waiting for the perfect moment to propose, was evidence of my confidence in our future together. As for my family, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. Contact had been reestablished, but on dramatically different terms. After 4 months of minimal communication, I had suggested meeting my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Ben accompanied me for moral support, but sat at a separate table, giving us privacy while remaining nearby if needed. That first meeting had been awkward, stilted. My mother looked older, the stress of financial readjustment evident in the new lines around her eyes. My father seemed diminished somehow, his customary authority replaced by a weary uncertainty. "You look well," my mother said, studying me closely. "I am well," I confirmed. "How are things with you?" The careful dance of small talk eventually gave way to more substantive conversation. They had been forced to make significant changes. The house, too expensive without my subsidies, had been sold. They had downsized to a small townhouse in a less prestigious neighborhood. "It's an adjustment," my father admitted, "but the mortgage is manageable now." My mother had taken a part-time position as an administrative assistant, her first job in over 20 years. "The hours are reasonable and the extra income helps," she said, a hint of pride in her voice that I had never heard before. I established clear parameters for our renewed relationship. We could meet in public places. We could talk on the phone at scheduled times. Financial discussions were off limits unless they pertained to their progress toward independence. Any violation of these boundaries would result in another period of no contact. They agreed, perhaps because they had no choice, perhaps because they had finally begun to understand the damage their behavior had caused. Either way, our interactions had a new framework, one built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Elara's journey had been more complicated. After moving back home, she had cycled through resentment, blame, and finally grudging acceptance of the new reality. When my parents downsized, she had been forced to find her own housing and sustainable employment for the first time in her adult life. Surprisingly, she had risen to the challenge. Through a friend of a friend, she had secured a position as an assistant at a small marketing firm. The salary was modest, the work demanding, but she had maintained the job for 4 months now, longer than any previous employment. Our relationship remained strained, but a tentative reconciliation had begun with an unexpected text. "I got my first raise today. Did it without anyone's help." The simple acknowledgement of her own capability, of the satisfaction that came from earned success rather than handouts, suggested a shift in her perspective, a glimmer of the independent adult she might become. The most unexpected development had been the strengthening of relationships with extended family. Aunt Beatrice had become a regular presence in my life, our Sunday phone calls a source of genuine connection. Cousin Liam and I met for dinner monthly, sharing stories and support. These relationships, previously overshadowed by the intensity of my nuclear family dynamics, now flourished in the healthier emotional environment I had created. As for my grandfather's legacy, I had found peace there too. The books he had left me, once a painful reminder of disinheritance, now held pride of place in my new home office. His fishing gear, carefully restored, hung on the wall of the second bedroom. These mementos, initially seeming like consolation, prizes, had become treasured connections to the man who had seen my worth when others had not. "We should invite Sarah and Mark over for dinner this weekend," Ben suggested, pulling me back to the present moment. "Celebrate the new place properly." "That sounds perfect," I agreed, mentally planning the menu, enjoying the luxury of entertaining friends in a space that felt truly mine. Later that evening, as Ben and I discussed our future, I felt a sense of possibility that had been absent during the years of financial entanglement with my family. "I've been thinking about starting my own practice," I admitted, "a small accounting firm focused on helping women achieve financial independence, something that combines my professional skills with what I've learned personally." "You'd be amazing at that," Ben said, "and the timing might be right with your client base and reputation." "It's a risk," I acknowledged. "The best things usually are," he replied, squeezing my hand. "And if anyone knows how to manage risk wisely, it's you." As we discussed potential business models and timelines, I realized how profoundly my perspective had shifted. A year ago, such a venture would have been impossible, not just financially, but psychologically. The constant drain of family demands had left no space for my own dreams. No energy for building a future truly aligned with my values. The boundaries I had established, painful as they were to implement, had created space for growth, for possibility, for a life defined by choice rather than obligation. The inheritance I had given myself, the gift of financial and emotional autonomy, had yielded returns beyond what I could have imagined. Looking around at the home I had created, at the partner who supported me, at the future opening before me, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not for what had been taken from me, but for what I had found the strength to reclaim. This was my inheritance, earned through courage and boundaries, through saying no to exploitation and yes to self-respect. This was the legacy I would build, not from money handed down, but from values held firm through difficulty. This was my life, finally and truly my own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.